March was an interesting reading month for me. Kind of a mixed bag with some titles that are gonna go right to the top of my all-time favorites list. A couple that I didn't really like, one that I didn't finish, but most were really good. And I'm excited to just quickly go over everything I read in this month, starting with Stoner by John Williams. What a discovery this is for me. John Williams only, unfortunately, I believe, wrote like 3 or 4 books, novels. Stoner is the one that I read. It's the first Williams and not the last one. This book is a life-changing experience. What an incredible, lovely, moving prose. A book about a life of the protagonist, Stoner, William Stoner. And his life is a revelation to me. His quiet solitude, his melancholy, the way he accepts things is very interesting. I was frustrated with him throughout this book. I wanted him to be more, to stand up more, to fight more. But at the same time, I respected his demeanor in many situations. And I think I learned from this book perhaps more about myself than from any other book in recent memory. And it's written so beautifully. John Williams is a master. I'm really surprised that it took me this long to discover him. I know it's probably because he, like I said, only wrote few books. It's The Stoner. I believe he also wrote Augustus and I think Butcher's Crossing. Those are the 3 that most people talk about. And I'm gonna read all of them as soon as I can. Definitely by the end of the year, I'm hoping to have read all 3 just because of how much this book moved me. I mean, the language is beautiful, metaphors, similes. Like here's one of my favorite ones in this part early in the book. Stoner is talking to his father. His father is a farmer, never went anywhere, always lived on the farm. His hands are permanently stained by the dirt of the earth. And Stoner wants to go to university, and he's explaining to his father, talking about his dreams. He listened to his words fall as if from the mouth of another, and watched his father's face, which received those words as a stone receives the repeated blows of a fist. So like the stone, his father's face is unmoved. His father was a great man. He loved his son, but he was just limited in his capacity to understand certain things, limited by the life that he led. And this book is incredible. I mean, it's such a beautifully written tale of struggle, of acceptance. I mean, I can't think of a better book. And the way the better book for me to kind of throw in between all this sci-fi that I was reading particularly. Here's another quick excerpt. So here William is walking out onto a cold, wintry night, mist in the air, and just listen to this. At the corner, a street light pushed feebly against the darkness that closed around it. Imagine, it's so visually powerful, this image of gas street lamp, I suppose, pushing feebly, a losing battle, the lamp pushing its light against the darkness. Just visually stunning. This book is full of things like that. It should be read. I'm not saying that everyone is going to enjoy it. It is a little slow at times. But it wasn't to me. I mean, I loved every single word in this book, but I could see some people struggling with it, being frustrated by Stoner's acceptance of certain things, especially around how he gives up on his daughter. But this book feels so real. The life of the protagonist is incredible, sad, moving, important. I'll skip a couple of these here and go right into maybe... Let's talk next about City by Clifford Seamack. So this is part of my sci-fi classics that I was supposed to be reading, and I did in March. And this was a good book. I enjoyed it. It's a stitch-up novel. It's interesting. It's told from the dog's perspective. So the dogs are writing the book, and humans have disappeared essentially. And dogs ponder whether humans really ever existed. Humans have become kind of mythical creatures. Some dog scientists feel that maybe humans were the ones who really uplifted us, gave us intelligence, voice, the robots. Others feel that no, this is just a myth, creation myth. but it's an interesting tale. What's frustrating about this book, as it is the case with many books from that time, is treatment of women. In this case, they're non-existent, essentially. There are no women in this book. So that's a little bit frustrating, but I've accepted that as I'm reading some of the older literature. It's par for course, and I still enjoyed this book a lot. It's like a 7 out of 10, where A Stoner is a clear 10 out of 10, all-time favorite. This was a good and important science fiction book. I enjoyed it. Fun at times, well developed, well written as well. So that was a good one. Another good book, and again, this is not really science fiction. Kafka's Metamorphosis. It's not science fiction. It's not anything. It's freaking Kafka. The guy is a genius, or was a genius. In this short novella, he basically writes his own death. I'm gonna link. I have a full review of this one. I'm gonna link it. But what a story! Just mind-boggling tale of change, again, of acceptance, quietly. So it's very similar, completely different, but in some ways similar to this tale of Stoner. But yeah, Kafka predicts his own death in this book. This is a little bit of a spoiler. At the end of the book, the protagonist dies slowly of starvation, and his sister is taking care of him. And this is exactly the same way that Kafka dies. He dies of starvation because he's unable to swallow due to tuberculosis. So he starves himself to death. That's the official entry into Franz Kafka's death certificate, or whatever they do at the end, where they, the cause of death, starvation. And Kafka's sister was taking care of him as well, just the way it's written in Metamorphosis. Wow. This was written, I believe, in like 1915, around that time. Classic that doesn't feel like an old book. It's a new translation, also excellent, excellently done. Congrats to Susan Bernovsky on the translation. Beautiful book. I love it. I love Kafka's voice. It's so unique. No one writes like Kafka. He is his own. He's got his own voice. And it's not science fiction. Magical realism perhaps is the closest that we could, pigeonhole this book, but it's really just freaking Kafka. Dan Simmons, Hyperion. This is the other book that becomes my all-time favorites, and this goes to the top of my sci-fi list right away. What an incredible story. Hyperion, beautifully written, many different voices, because it's Canterbury tale style. Each tale is completely different, but they're all together. It's not quite like City. It's not a stitch-up novel. Oh my God, where was I? How come I didn't read this sooner? I've heard so much about Hyperion. I hate this cover, I think, and I can't find the hardcover for this book anywhere. I was hoping maybe a new release even would come out, because this is not an exciting cover in my opinion, and I don't like the small one. In any case, the book is incredible. I recommend it to any sci-fi reader. High science fiction concepts, great story, moving horror. It's freaking scary at times. Mind-blowing. It's really incredibly put together, very well written. Dan Simmons, fabulous author. He's written a lot. This is part of a series of books. Fall of Hyperion is the next one. I'm going to be reading it definitely soon. I love this book. It's a classic already. It was written in the 90s, but it's a classic of sci-fi literature for a good reason. Great book. Another classic book in the sci-fi realm is Hitchhiker's Guide to a Galaxy. I did not enjoy this book at all. I know this is an important book, and I'm glad that I've read it, but the humor here is not hitting for me. It's an important book, and I understand what it's doing, and I know that a lot of people love it for what's behind some of the jokes and the farcical nature of this book. The deeper meaning is definitely there, and I get that. I know many people love it. I know Elon Musk's take on this book as well. He credits this book for his ideology and and I know it's changed the way he thinks about many subjects. So definitely an important. I'm very happy that I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I know what the book is all about now, but I did not enjoy it. The jokes just fell flat for me. It's not my style of humor at all. And because of that, I would much prefer if it was more of a serious take on some of the subjects that it discusses. Fahrenheit 451 in a graphic novel form. Really well done. I think it really works. The dystopian feel really works well in this graphic novel. The darkness, the oppressive nature is presented very well in this graphic novel. I liked it. I read Fahrenheit 451 years ago, the book. This was a fun read as well. to kind of get back to that story, to that world in this fashion was a lot of fun. So I like this one a lot. Another classic of sci-fi literature. This one is not a classic. This is a new release, quick read. I picked it up. I read it in a day. Veronica Roth, Arch-Conspirator. Is that how you say it? Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing it. It's my Polish accent. Anyway, great book. Antigone, retelling in a sci-fi setting. A lot of fun. I mean, I knew the story of Antigone, but it's been a long, long time. So this was a fun way to kind of reconnect with the classic, but in a new setting. I liked it a lot. It was an easy read. Nothing that's gonna change your life for sure, but I enjoyed it. Veronica Roth is the author of Divergent series. So this was a fun book to read, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I listened to, I don't have the physical copy, but I listened to H.G. Wells' Time Machine, and I like that as well. So that's one of the classics that I needed to check off my list, and I'm glad that I did. Time Machine was interesting. It was fun. I mean, it was written in, I believe, 1895. So we're talking 19th century. So we're like 2 centuries removed from it, essentially. And so it's an old book. Again, no women, whatever. I can deal with that part of it. The concepts were interesting. It was well written, dated, of course, but such an important book when it comes to development of science fiction as a genre, and the time travel trope specifically. And it was really well done. The time travel side was really well done. Visually, I was imagining the time traveler sitting as the world kind of changes around him. A lot of fun, good story. I enjoyed it. Not great, but I'm glad that I've read it as well. I've been reading Stranger in a Strange Land. I just need to finish this book. So I didn't quite, it's not counting for my March books because it's not quite finished. Same thing, unfortunately, with iRobot. I have like 2 stories to go and I haven't had time to finish it. I was busy. I was on vacation. As if you haven't seen my vacation video, I'm going to link that also. I was in Telluride skiing. We had a lot of fun doing that, but my reading time was unfortunately limited. It suffered because of that, but I had a good excuse. And if you check out the video, you'll see why. So I'm curious if you've read some of these books. I have a couple more to talk about, but let me know if you've read any of the books I talked about so far. What have you been reading? Do you prefer classics when it comes to sci-fi or modern stuff? Same thing with just literature in general. Stoner, again, if you've read that, or if you've read any of the other John Williams books, I need to hear from you. Let me know what do you think about them. And then I tried manga also, because I've never read much in the manga. Picked up maybe 1 or 2 books ever. So I picked up JoJo, Bizarre Adventures of JoJo, and I couldn't get through this. This was so dumb, in my opinion. I could not finish it. Maybe I'm just too old. I'm 48 to be reading this, and you're gonna hate me for saying it, but it was just, JoJo was such a dumb for me. There was things that were so obvious and that he wasn't seeing, that I couldn't deal with it. So I just gave up. But Berserk is a lot of fun, and so far I just started it. This is much darker, more violent for sure, but I'm enjoying Berserk. I like Attack of Titans. That one I do like, and I've been watching it on Netflix. So anyway, this manga is it's got possibilities. I may stick with Berserk and get into it, but that's about it. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'm curious what you're doing, what you're reading, what are your thoughts on what I've read, and yeah, I gotta start thinking about my future books, because I'm finishing Stranger in a Strange Land, and yeah, April's here. Time is flying. I'll talk to you soon.